Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar. Really looking forward to chatting more with Amanda Horner from TELUS Digital. I'm Jess Hopp. So great to see everybody here. Please drop in the chat where you're from, what you're up to, maybe your job title. Would love to learn more how to support everybody. So today, just a few housekeeping things. We do have a Q&A feature in our call today, in our webinar. So if you do happen to have a question or regarding what's being talked about or just a question in general, please feel free to drop your question in the Q&A and we'll make sure to get to it. But yes, so excited to have you all here. We have Amanda Horner, who is with TELUS Digital. She leads the event and field marketing teams over there at TELUS. And I'm Jess Hopp. I am leading the events and community at Vendalux. So Amanda, tell us a little more about your role at TELUS and what that event marketing function looks like to you and your team.
Yeah, so so TELUS Digital is a customer experience transformation partner. So we do sort of end-to-end digital transformation services across the customer journey. So we have a really, really diverse list of services, really diverse list of clients, and we have about 80,000 employees across the world. And so I lead a team of, I guess, 7 event marketers around the world, and we do all sorts of events, whether that's going and being a big sponsor at a trade show like Adobe Summit, or going to golf tournaments, or smaller conferences, sort of all over the map. We do about just under 100 events a year across the team.
That's amazing. I know in my early days of events, I planned a golf outing. So like kudos to you all and the energy that you put into events. Would love to know more about like your pain points. And when we're talking about event spend and, putting that into like predictable pipeline, what were those initial pain points that were leading you to think, oh, I need to get a solution figured out, to lead you to where you want to go to hit your event goals?
Yeah, so I mean, at the end of the day, events are just very expensive. So the cost per lead in the events world is just really, really high compared to other marketing channels. So I think there's always just this added scrutiny when your single line item expenses are as high as they are. In a world of GDPR and extra privacy concerns, we are finding it more and more difficult to find out who was going to be at these shows. The conference organizers were sharing far less information, where it used to be that they'd share the company, their job title, maybe even their name, and maybe no contact information. We were going to these big events where they're sharing the company name and maybe like their seniority level or what area of the business, but no way to really figure out who was going to be there. So we're spending all of this money to be in these spaces. And it was requiring our sales team to do a lot of due diligence ahead of the event to reach out to their networks in a pretty uninformed way of saying, hey, we're going to be here. Are you going to be here too? And that's a lot of work. It's cumbersome work. And it's work that nobody really wants to do. And so it was getting more and more difficult in the, coming out of COVID years ago. Everybody wanted to get back into to live environments, face-to-face environments. Right. And it just, we had gone from not doing it for a couple of years to then really wanting to reinvest there, and finding it to be a more difficult environment than ever before. So we really were just looking to be as informed as possible going into these events.
Love that. I know we had, like a debrief call, you and I, before we got on the webinar, and you were talking about your procurement process, which is always a fun term that we love to talk about, is procurement. Can you talk a little bit about that process for you internally and what it looked like to evaluate tech tools? We know there are so many options out there, and like, what are some things that you and your team looked at when you're trying to solve for those pain points you mentioned earlier?
I think one of the most difficult things was that there wasn't like a natural competitor to or Vendelux against. And so really, I mean, shout out to the sales team at Vendelux for their patience. I mean, probably, a salesperson's nightmare, but we took almost 12 months to make the decision to go forward with the product. Like I said, events are expensive. So like, as you know, maybe the cost of the tool relative to like what we're spending maybe isn't that much, but in terms of our marketing tech toolkit, it was a considerable line item for us. And so I think it just was really just taking the patience to sort of explain to everyone what we thought we were going to be able to do from this. Our leadership was already very aligned about the importance of events and the importance of showing up in the right rooms with the right people. And so this was just really a way of making us more effective in those places. For our business, we have a really long sales cycle. So oftentimes we come out of those events and people want to say, well, what happened? What happened? What happened? The week after that. And when you're going in blind, or you're getting that information, a week or two before the event, and then throwing all your resources out in sort of like a crash course type way, it's really difficult. And it's, then that ROI period becomes even longer. And so for us, it was just being patient, both internally to say, hey, here's how this tool could help you, and here's how this tool could help you. And I wouldn't say like our actual procurement process was a pain, other than, but there wasn't that natural competitor. Some companies have, if you're doing something a threshold, you have to get 3 competitive bids or something like that. We didn't face any of those, like anything that like a hurdle that like stopped us on the procurement side. It was really just being able to create that case internally amongst our leadership to say, yeah, let's give this a try. And it's hard because we didn't know what we didn't know. We had done demos of the product. We had picked on an event that we were going to be attending in a couple months and said, we attended this last year. We have the lead list. Let's see what you have versus what we have. So we could do some, do a little bit of our own due diligence on checking the data. Because I think it felt in some ways that we were just putting a lot of trust into a platform that we just, didn't know exactly how it worked. Where's the data coming from? Where's this? How are you doing the predictive analytics about who's going to be there? And ultimately, I think we had just talked to enough people from other companies that were using the product, did enough demos, had enough people that said, yeah, you know what, I think this might be a real impact in the way we're going to market at events. But yeah, it was a long process for us.
I'm sure. Yeah. And I love that you brought up, right after an event, everyone's very gung ho on feedback. We understand that in the industry that we're in. But not only the process of like planning for the next year, but also then implementing a new tool in your planning process. How did you feel that went with your team? And then also maybe share a little about how, other teams were able to adopt the tool as well.
Yeah, so it's been funny. So we got access to Vendelux in, I guess, like late October of 2025. And when we started off, we had our licenses and we assigned them out to our events marketing team. We assigned them out to one SDR that happens to sit right next to me that I pick on a lot to
Proximity.
help me. And sort of just assign those internally. And then as we were able to show up at meetings and say, hey, here's who we think is going to be at this event. This is, who was at the event last year. All of a sudden, the folks that, a lot more of the SDRs and a lot more of the sales team and operations team were like, where are you getting this information? Blah, blah, blah. And it just sort of like organically spread. And so next year when we are renewing this, we're definitely going to need more licenses.
Right.
It's moved from my team, which I would say is much more in like the execution of the event, how we're showing up at the event, enabling our sales team. It's sort of spread across different areas of marketing, and also the sales team in those SDRs where they're going in, and our marketing strategy team is going in ahead of the event and creating lists of who our targets are specific to that to that conference, and they're pulling that data for us. They're equipping those sales teams. They're enriching it through Salesforce and things like that. So we're coming at these events with a lot more information about who's going to be there, but also like equipping our sales teams to be much more targeted with their outreach. So it feels a lot less like shots in the dark. It's I mean, just today or before this call, I had somebody else that's reaching out to me, and someone that's never used the tool, but he's hearing other people, and he's like, how do I get a license? And I'm like, well, wait a couple months, but and
Get in line.
we may be buying some more before that as well. But so it's just sort of organically spread, which I think is ideal, right? Like people are seeing the value of it, and they're seeing that it's making some impacts, and more and more people want to get access to it, which is great for my team because then it's getting really established into like the processes, rather than just pulling a list here and there. Everybody is looking to Vendolux as one of our hallmark marketing tech tools.
That's amazing. It's like Vendolux almost turns into like another team member. It's like very relied upon. I love that.
Yeah. And actually, I mean, we are now using the meeting services,
yes.
meeting booking services as well. So like adding an additional member to our team. So we've launched, we've done probably 5 to 6 campaigns or so this year using the the Vendolux SDR service, which is great because it allows us to sort of scale at a different pace than we can with just using our own SDRs.
Amazing. Yeah. Can you talk and walk us through a little bit more of how you use the meetings program and what that looks like through your lens? Because I know that before it was like probably a manual process.
For sure.
Yeah.
And we're still doing that manual process. So our SDRs are going in, they're seeing who's going to be there, they're figuring out who they want to target, and they're doing that sort of like, one-on-one outreach. But when you're pulling data from Vendolux and, and you get their email addresses and their LinkedIns and stuff, that's all great, but we can't actually like upload it into like our email messaging tools and things like that because we don't have, the opt-ins to be able to do that. And so they're still sort of doing a lot of like one-to-one, one-to-many outreach points. And so using the Vendolux SDR service sort of allows us to scale. So I would say we're using the Vendolux service to sort of hit just a larger swath of the attendees for conferences, and then having our SDRs do like the top tier targeting.
Yeah. So tell me how the program changed from what you expect of your SDRs in the field, like using Vendolux versus not that manual process.
So from my perspective, I actually am equipping the SDRs to manage that process. So I'm not going in and setting up those campaigns and blah, blah, blah. I'm allowing the SDRs that have licenses to go in there and set up the campaigns on their own, which works out for everybody. And then that also gives them a little bit more visibility into who's being outreached already, versus me having to do some sort of, they've already booked a meeting with this company, blah, blah, blah. And so yeah, they are equipped. And again, that's something that just happened naturally. The first events that we used the meetings tool, I was doing it. And then it just came, well, why don't you just try to do this? And then, it actually does work out better when the SDRs are doing it themselves.
I love that. So with the meetings, we're all aware of no-show rates, right? Like I see conversations happen on LinkedIn and in community groups on no-show rates and just like how that's kind of on the rise. How has like having this better data helped your team and your SDRs like set expectations around no shows?
Yeah, so I would say the no-show rate is probably still the same, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
still at a conference, people are getting, and for us, we, especially with the meeting services, we only do use that campaigning when it's a large event. We don't do it with, if it's like a 2,000 person event, 3,000, we don't really use
Mm-hmm.
tool. Then we feel like we can handle it on our own. But
Mm-hmm.
it's more when we're going out to the 10,000 person conference that we want to start looking at that tool. So I would say that our no-show rate is probably about the same, but the number of meetings that we're booking is probably doubled. And, regardless of whether or not we were able to get time with them in person at that event, each of those people showed some sort of indication that they want to have a conversation with us.
Mm-hmm.
So it still gives us an opportunity after the event to say, hey, we missed you, but can we still connect? And we have a call that's happening this afternoon from the last time we did this, doing
Mm-hmm.
exactly that.
Amazing. Yeah, that's great. Um, I always like to ask this questions like, what would you tell another field marketer or event marketer leader who's on the fence on like investing in this type of event intelligence?
I mean, honestly, it's like, what else are you going to do? Like, you know somebody at
Yeah.
the conference that's going to give you some sort of information. Like what we were doing before is we were waiting till 2 weeks, 3 weeks before the conference, going into the
Hmm.
app, taking a million screenshots of who's going
Yes.
to be there,
Hmm.
and trying to so it was so manual. I mean, I would literally like sit in my living room and put something on, and I would just,
Gilmore Girls.
yeah,
Just hang out.
always. And then just, screenshotting things blindly as I'm doing something else, just because it was that type of work. I mean,
Yeah.
it's it's mind numbing. And then you're never going to get through it all either. So it's like,
Hmm.
we've seen, maybe we just prefer everybody that has a name that starts with A to M, because you're never ever going to get to the Z's, because there's just so much information in there.
Yeah.
And you're pulling all these screen, you got half of them are competitors or not your buyers. And so
Mm.
you're doing all this work. It's still so much to parse out. Obviously, AI tools make some of that easier, but it's still, I mean, it was still so manual. So from my perspective, it's like, really, what else are you going to do? There's other, you get, when you sponsor these big trade shows, you get a million emails from these companies that are saying, hey, we have the list. We're going to sell you the list for, 25 cents a lead or whatever they're charging. And then you get emails from the conference organizers that are like, don't do that. That's
Right.
against your contract, and we're not partnered with them. And you're like, what am I supposed to do? Like, and so those things, I never actually bought one of those lists, but I did take some calls being like, where is this information coming
Yeah.
from? Blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But you
Totally.
never walked away feeling like that you weren't being scammed. And
Yeah.
so really, I would say, as I started off this call saying, like, these are gigantic investments. We need to do everything we can to put our best foot forward, and equip our sales team to have the best experience that they possibly can at this event. And without data, how are they supposed to do that?
For sure. Yeah, and going back to your point on like legitimate data, like what were some green flags when you met with the team here to be like, oh yeah, no, this is the direction that we want to go?
I mean, like I said, we had asked for some specific data around conferences that we had previously attended, where we did have the full attendee list, just to sort of see what they were. And obviously, we were doing this like post event, but so that gave us, some confidence that the data was good, because we were able to validate that on our own. And then honestly, I would say it was just, I must have gotten on a call with our salesperson like 10 times to just be like, show me this again, show me this again,
Yes.
show me this
Yeah.
again. And you do, like, I did feel like I had to put a little bit of like blind trust into the platform, because you don't know what you don't know. It's like,
Mhm.
how can I be certain that data is going to be good data. And
Yeah.
um, yeah. And so we just decided that ultimately it was worth the risk. And the rest is history.
I love it. Yeah, and you mentioned that you chatted with other Vendolux customers, so doing your due diligence is important on that end too.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I think when, we work with a lot of different tech partners. And so I am very, I'm constantly having conversations with other event marketers. So,
Hmm.
I had said, does anybody use Vendolux? And I honestly, like a year ago, well, more when we first started these conversations, there were some people that were like, "Oh yeah, I'd done a demo." I had one person that had really been in the tool, but a lot of people not aware. And that's like over the
Sure.
last year, it's really changed. So now we're going
Hmm.
to do these co-marketed events. I'm like, "Oh, we use Vendolux," and other people are like, "Oh, we use it too." And just
Hmm.
earlier today, I had someone reach out and say, "Oh, I saw you were doing this webinar. Can we, chat about what you think about Vendolux?" And
Yeah.
so I
Yeah.
think that having those other event marketers provide that validation is probably the most powerful thing. Obviously,
Yeah.
there's like G2 and things like that that you can go on and see, but the power of like your network saying, "Yeah, try this out," I think was the most important.
I love it. Well, thank you so much, Amanda. This is a great conversation. Always love to hear how you're growing your team and what y'all are up to at TELUS Digital. But thank you all so much for joining our webinar. Be on the lookout for upcoming webinars to get you all more support on your events. And yeah, would love to have you all at the next one. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Amanda.
Yeah, thank you.